Hello there guys, and welcome to another one of my reviews. Today we are driving the BMW X6 M in its competition version. Now BMW launched the X6 M, the current generation, last year, and it finally came to me for a review, and I'm going to share my thoughts about the car with you. This is actually the third generation X6 M model, and it's the third generation BMW X6. To be honest, there's a lot of thirds in this car because this is the third iteration of the S63 engine under the hood. The first one, the S63T1, I think it was called, was used under the hood of the F10 M5 and the original E71 X6M as well. Then came the second generation, which was used on the second generation X6M as well. Now here's the third generation X6M, and it uses the third version of the S63 4.4 liter twin turbo V8. So yeah, there have been some changes done to this engine, but before we get into all that, let's talk about the design a little bit. Now if you followed me in my previous review of the BMW X6, you probably know that I'm not a big fan of the exterior design. So I like the front end. It's aggressive, it's massive, it has a lot of presence, and it demands respect on the road. But, and there's a big but, the rear end is hideous if you ask me. There's just way too much going on, way too many shapes, way too many dips and straight lines and so on. So it feels a bit overly complicated to me. However, the X6M looks, if you ask me, looks a lot better. There are slight changes in the back. There's a lip on the boot lid. There's a tiny spoiler up front at the top of the tailgate, and there's a slightly revised rear bumper. Instead of the fake grills to the side, you have reflectors over there, and the rear end, the lower part of the rear bumper shows a diffuser that doesn't really do much on a car of this size, and the quad tailpipe exhaust for the 4.4 liter engine under the hood. There are more differences on the M version as well up front. So the kidney grille doesn't have the regular slats you would find on a regular X6. It has double slats. It has the X6M badge infused in it. And on competition models, it comes blacked out. All the exterior trims around the windows and so on are blacked out on competition models. There's also a new shape for the bumper that has larger grills for the bigger coolers needed, and intercoolers and radiators needed to cool off this huge motor under the hood. So yeah, you can easily tell an X6M from an X6, a regular M6. So on the sides you have bigger wheels. Normal X6M models get 21-inch wheels, but on the competition versions you get 22s in the back. So you have 21-inch wheels up front and 22s in the back. They have a special design. You'll also notice the huge brake calipers hiding beneath them. You'll also notice the side seals that are blacked out. You'll also notice the side mirror covers, which are aerodynamically formed, and they have been a trademark feature for every M car since the 1980s. So yeah, you can easily tell this is an M model. Inside the cabin, the layout is basically the same as you would find in any other X6 model, but there are some key differences. First of all, the door sills say X6M Competition. You have the competition model. And the seats and the door panels are different as well. You have this very, very nice layout. The seats are incredibly comfortable. They remind me of the Vader seats in the BMW E36 M3. They are extremely comfortable, cooled, vented, heated, everything you want, massaging seats if you want. You can configure your car with those as well. They look brilliant. They have this honeycomb design in the middle, and you can get a number of color combinations. This car has a white and black combo, which will get dirty over time because, you know, that's what happens with white leather. The same honeycomb design repeats itself on the door, and on this tester we have the carbon fiber trims package, which is 1,300 euros. But you get a lot of different options in this department as well. You can configure your car however you like. Another key difference is the steering wheel. It has roughly the same design as an M Sport steering wheel, but the way to separate the M model from the M Sport model is to look at the third spoke here. If it has a gap in the middle, then this is an M car, an M steering wheel. It's not an M Sport one. You also have two red buttons up here, M1 and M2, which basically can be configured to save certain presets. I'm going to talk about that a bit later. There's also the M gear shift knob. Looks absolutely brilliant, wrapped in leather with the M logo on it, and it has a tiny little light in here that lights up at night and creates an incredibly nice looking atmosphere over here. The red start-stop engine button is also a part of an M model. You have 3 more buttons here that you don't find in regular X6 models. You have the M mode button, the setup button, and the exhaust button, because on this car we have the M Sport exhaust, which should sound better than the regular exhaust. So also on the gear shift knob you have a setting for how fast the gear shifts should be made. You have a button, a park button as well, and that's about it. So these are the main physical differences you can see without turning on the engine in an M model, an X6 model. Then there's also the instrument cluster. On M models, the instrument cluster is special. It has a different design. The layout is basically the same, but the rev counter is on the right and it's counterclockwise, which definitely disappointed me. On the left side you have the speedometer, and it has a completely different design. Looks a lot better in my book than the regular one. Also, when you enter sport mode, it changes. You have the speed highlighted in the middle, and you have like 2 rev counters to the sides. It's really hard to explain, and it changes colors whenever you hit like the optimum speed shift point. Looks really, really good. The head-up display is also different. You have an M head-up display. If you wanted to, you can configure it as well. You have different fonts and so on. And you have a new sub-menu in the infotainment screen that allows you to configure some stuff on this car. Because as you probably know, modern M cars have a lot of configuration possibilities. Basically, you can set up every driving mode you want. And you can set up some more. I mean, standard, when you press the M mode button, you have 3 choices: road, sport, and track. Road is the most usual way of driving this car. Basically, it's the most comfortable one, the most efficient one. The engine is in its most efficient mode. The suspension is the most comfortable. The transmission is shifting slowly and so on. So it's the most chill out mode you could get. Then there's sport mode. Sport mode enhances everything, switches everything to the sport settings. And then you have track mode. In order to activate track mode, you have to really confirm like a couple of times before the car actually switches into track mode. That's because it will disable DSC, and you have a lot of power on this car, so you need to be really sure you want to disable the DSC. It's also because it switches everything to its sportiest setting, and so on. So once you enter track mode, the infotainment screen shuts off because you will be focused on the track, won't you? It also changes the instrument cluster and the head-up display. So that's something you might want to keep in mind. And it's all focused on driving. Turns off the music and everything. Of course, you can turn back the music if you want to, but that's a different topic of discussion. And then there's the setup button. This setup button allows you to configure the two buttons on the steering wheel. Basically, you can set one for ultimate comfort if you want, and you can set the other for the most hardcore settings if you want to. There's a myriad of ways you can set up your car. Maybe find the perfect balance. For example, get the throttle in sport mode and the transmission in sport mode, and get the steering in comfort mode, or any other configuration you want, and you can save it to one button or the other. So it's a really nice trick that BMW did in order to allow you not to go through every single settings menu whenever you want to change something. So how about the driving experience? Well, this car shouldn't be possible. This car shouldn't be as good at handling as it is. I mean, this is an SUV, an SAC if you ask BMW, which means Sports Activity Coupe. So it's a tall riding car, it's a heavy car. It weighs nearly 2.4 tons. So, and all that weight sits a bit higher than usual. So keeping it in check demands a lot of innovative solutions. And they are quite brilliantly implemented. So the car has active anti-roll bars, has a lot of bracing up front in the engine compartment to keep the front end very stiff, comes with adaptive M suspension, which does a great job, comes with an M active differential at the back to keep the traction perfect. The MX drive system switches power from front to back really nicely, and most of the time the car will feel like it's rear-wheel drive, especially in four-wheel drive sport mode, which sends most of the power to the rear, and it handles absolutely brilliantly. I couldn't believe how well this car handles the weight. First of all, I mean, you enter a corner and you can feel, if you carry too much speed into it, you can feel a bit of understeer, and that's normal because the front end does have a lot of grip, but it will slide under such heavy inertia. So it's normal to feel a bit of understeer whenever you're pushing the car really hard. But then, since most of the power can be sent to the rear axle, you just press the gas pedal and you can absolutely oversteer with this car any time of the day. You can oversteer day and night. You can do burnouts. And I know some people who manage to get behind the software lock on this MX drive system, because it is a software lock. This is basically the same all-wheel drive system you find on the M5. So on the M5, you can turn the car into a rear-wheel drive car by the press of a button. The front end decouples from the transmission, and you have like a rear-wheel drive car. And as I found out, that was a software lock put in place by BMW on its SUVs like the X3 M and the X5 M, in order to keep these cars all-wheel drive like all the time. But you can change that. Of course, I don't recommend you do it, but you can. And you can actually have an X6 car with rear-wheel drive, which is quite amazing if you ask me. So yeah, the car handles perfectly, and a lot of the credit goes to the tires. They do an amazing job at gripping and gripping and gripping. The car comes as standard with Michelin Pilot with Michelin Pilot 4S tires, which are basically like the best you can get on a high-performance SUV. The engine has a great pedal response. It's really sharp. It's a twin-turbo setup, and in the usual BMW manner, it's a hot V setup. Basically, that means the turbos are inside on the upper side of the V8, closer to the exhaust manifold and the valves, in order to offer a better pedal response. And all that work shows. I mean, this car responds great. On the standard X6M, you have 600 horsepower. On the X6 M Competition, 625. And the Competition model also comes with some changes done to the suspension. It rides a bit lower and it's a bit stiffer. But honestly, after driving the X3 M Competition, which was like one of the stiffest cars I ever drove, this car seems like a really comfortable GT cruiser. It's brilliant. It handles its weight brilliantly. The problem you get comes from the wheels. Now, they are 21-inch up front and 22-inch in the back, and that doesn't leave a lot of room for tires. So there isn't a lot of tire in between the rim and the asphalt you're driving on. So of course it's not gonna feel as comfortable as a 7 Series. But the suspension is really supple, really well set up. You won't get any, your back won't hurt after a longer trip. And the seats do help out in that regard as well. But they do send a bit of, some rude noises through the cabin whenever you hit a pothole or something. But really, I'm just nitpicking here. A car with this kind of performance shouldn't be this comfortable when you want it to be. So yeah, the engine responds really well. The 8-speed gearbox is brilliant, as we all know. I mean, I almost forgot to mention it because I'm saying the same thing over and over again whenever I'm driving a BMW with a ZF 8-speed gearbox. So this is the most powerful iteration, the one that can handle the most torque in the BMW range today, and it's absolutely brilliant. There's no point in crying over the DCT 7-speed unit that was used on some M models, because on the X models and the XM models, there was never a 7-speed gearbox. The first generation had a 6-speed. The second generation had a similar ZF 8-speed gearbox. So there's nothing new here in that regard. So what's the main takeaway here then? Well, this is a blazing fast car that can handle a lot better than a lot of drivers will be willing to push it. I mean, it gets so fast, it's scary. And if you take it to the track, the car will probably be capable of handling a lot more than you are capable of driving. So I'm not calling you a bad driver, but in order to really manhandle this car, you need a lot of skill and a lot of guts, because it will lean and it has a lot of power and it will oversteer. And on such a big car, you really need a big set of cojones to be able to be brave enough to keep up with the car in the first place. So brilliant work from BMW M. I absolutely love this car. I didn't expect to love it as much as I do. What's the takeaway then? Well, considering the BMW X6 M Competition can do 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds, and I've seen a lot of tests done with this car in which it was even faster than the claim numbers from BMW, I think it can hang with the best of the best. Its main rivals will be the Mercedes AMG GLE 63S Coupe, along with the Cayenne Coupe Turbo S and the Audi RSQ8, and what else? And some people are comparing the X6M to the Lamborghini Urus. Now the Urus is more powerful and a bit faster on paper, but I've seen drag races between them, and in some cases the BMW won. So, it's kind of a split decision, and I don't think the comparison is fair because the Lambo is like twice as expensive, so it really shouldn't be a competition between them. But the X6 is really close, and that shows just how potent this car is, how capable it is. And for 155,000 euros, as much as this car costs, I think there's no better choice out there. That said, this has been my review of the BMW X6 M Competition. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share, and of course subscribe. And drop a comment if you're willing, if you want to talk more about this car, if you have any more questions. I know I didn't touch on every single subject, so feel free to hit me up, and I will be more than glad to answer your questions. Until next time, don't forget to take care of yourself. Ciao.